The moment the owner slowly stepped toward the table, the cat sensed that something was wrong, not in a loud or obvious way, but in the quiet shift of the room itself, where the air felt heavier and the silence lingered a little too long. And right there in the center of the table sat something that instantly pulled the cat's attention. Something that looked impossibly familiar, almost unsettlingly so, because it had the same shape, the same color, the same calm expression that the cat saw every day in reflections and shadows. And for a brief second, the cat froze, eyes widening as if its mind refused to accept what it was seeing. Then, cautiously, it leaned forward. Head tilted, whiskers stretched, breathing shallow and alert, studying the object as though it might suddenly move or breathe back, while the owner stood still, deliberately giving no signal, letting the moment stretch, letting the cat decide how close it dared to come. And step by step the cat approached, placing a paw on the edge of the table before pulling it back again, gaze flicking between the owner's face and the cake, searching for reassurance or warning. And with every passing second, the tension grew more visible in the stiff posture of its body, until the owner finally lifted the knife, slowly and carefully. And in that instant, everything changed, because the cat's ears flattened, its body lowered, and a clear fear flashed across its eyes. The kind of fear that comes from not understanding what danger looks like, but knowing it is close. And the cat hesitated, torn between curiosity and instinct, backing away and then stopping as if unwilling to leave but unable to stay calm. And when the knife hovered just above the cake, backing away and then stopping as if unwilling to leave but unable to stay calm. And when the knife hovered just above the cake, the cat leaned in once more, sniffing deeply, trying to solve the mystery with scent alone. Its breathing quick and uneven, and then the blade finally touched the surface, cutting through softly, and the cat recoiled, muscles tight, eyes locked on the cut as though expecting the impossible. And for a heartbeat, the room felt suspended, but then the truth revealed itself layer by layer, as the cake opened to show what it really was. Something harmless, something lifeless, something that posed no threat at all. And slowly, the cat's body relaxed, tension melting away as understanding replaced fear. Its ears lifted, its posture eased, and it stepped forward again, calmer now, sniffing without panic, watching without alarm, until the owner gently reached out and rested a hand on its head, and the cat closed its eyes, breathing evenly at last, settling into the quiet reassurance of trust. Because what had frightened it most was not the knife or the cake, but the confusion of seeing itself reflected in something it could not understand. And in that moment, with the danger gone and the mystery solved, the room returned to peace, leaving behind a silent reminder of how deeply animals feel, even when they cannot explain it. After the first cut revealed the truth, the tension in the room didn't disappear all at once, but slowly unraveled, second by second, as the cat remained close, watching every movement with careful attention, its eyes still fixed on the cake as if expecting it to change again. Because even though the fear had eased, the memory of confusion lingered, and the cat circled the table, moving with deliberate caution, sniffing from different angles, lowering its head, then lifting it again, comparing what it saw now with what it had believed just moments before, while the owner stayed quiet, allowing the cat to regain control at its own pace. And with each pass around the table, the cat's posture softened. Its tail lowered into a relaxed curve, and its breathing slowed into a steady rhythm, curiosity slowly replacing fear. And when the owner sliced another piece, the sound of the knife against the plate no longer caused the cat to flinch. Instead, it leaned in, eyes wide but calm, observing with a new kind of focus, as though learning something important about the world, something about how appearances can deceive, and how not every familiar shape carries the same meaning. And soon the cat placed its paw on the table again, this time leaving it there, testing its confidence. And when nothing happened, it took another step forward, bringing its nose close to the exposed cake, inhaling deeply, recognizing the scent of sugar and cream rather than fur and warmth. And this realization seemed to settle deep inside it, because the tension fully drained from its body, replaced by a quiet acceptance. And the cat finally sat down, tucking its paws beneath itself, watching calmly as the owner continued to cut the cake, no longer alarmed, no longer confused, just attentive and present. And the room itself felt different now, lighter, as if the shared moment of uncertainty had passed and left behind a stronger sense of trust. And when the owner softly spoke and gently stroked the cat's back, the cat responded by leaning into the touch, eyes half closed, completely at ease. And what had begun as a moment of fear turned into something else entirely, a moment of learning and reassurance, where the cat understood, in its own quiet way, that it was safe, that the hands near it meant no harm. and that even when the world presents something strange and unsettling, patience and calm can bring clarity. And as the cat remained there beside the table, relaxed and unbothered, it became clear that the experience had not frightened it permanently, but instead deepened the bond between animal and owner, proving that trust is not built through words or explanations, but through actions, timing, and the gentle respect of allowing fear to fade naturally until peace takes its place once more. As the minutes passed, the cat's behavior continued to change in subtle but meaningful ways, no longer circling with uncertainty but settling into a quiet confidence, occasionally glancing at the cake yet no longer treating it as a threat, as if the strange reflection it had seen earlier had lost its power, and instead the cat focused on the familiar presence of the owner, whose calm movements and steady breathing acted like an anchor in the room. And when another slice was lifted and placed aside, the cat followed the motion with interest rather than fear, eyes relaxed, ears forward, absorbing the scene with a sense of understanding that had not been there before. And it stretched slowly, releasing the last traces of tension from its body, then sat again, composed and alert, as though the experience had shifted something inside it, teaching it that not every unknown moment leads to danger, and that sometimes stillness reveals the truth better than panic. And the owner noticed this change, responding with gentler movements, reinforcing the feeling of safety without interrupting it, allowing the cat to remain in control of its own space. And for a while they simply existed together in that shared calm. The cake now just an object on the table, stripped of its earlier illusion. And when the cat finally looked away from it entirely, choosing instead to watch the owner's face, it became clear where its trust truly rested. Because the eyes that once searched for threat now searched only for connection. And in that silent exchange there was reassurance, a mutual understanding that needed no sound. And the room, once tense and uncertain, now felt balanced and warm, filled with a quiet respect that lingered long after the knife was set down and the cake was no longer the center of attention. And the cat, having faced something confusing and emerged calm, seemed more settled than before, its presence peaceful, its breathing slow and steady, as if the moment had not just passed but had gently reshaped its sense of safety, leaving behind a deeper bond and a quiet reminder that trust is built not in dramatic gestures, but in patience, consistency, and the simple act of allowing fear to fade on its own. Because the eyes that once searched for threat now searched only for connection. And in that silent exchange there was reassurance, a mutual understanding that needed no sound. And the room, once tense and uncertain, now felt balanced and warm, filled with a quiet respect that lingered long after the knife was set down and the cake was no longer the center of attention. And the cat, having faced something confusing and emerged calm, seemed more settled than before, its presence peaceful, its breathing slow and steady, as if the moment had not just passed but had gently reshaped its sense of safety, leaving behind a deeper bond and a quiet reminder that trust is built not in dramatic gestures, but in patience, consistency, and the simple act of allowing fear to fade on its own. With the strange moment now behind them, the cat moved freely around the room, no longer drawn by the table or the cake, but by the familiar rhythm of its home, brushing lightly against the furniture and pausing near the owner as if to confirm that everything had truly returned to normal. And the owner, aware of how delicate the experience had been, remained calm and unhurried, allowing the cat to choose closeness on its own terms. And when the cat finally jumped onto the chair beside the table, it did so without hesitation, glancing once at the cake and then away, signaling that the object no longer held emotional weight, and instead the cat focused on grooming itself. Slow, deliberate movements that showed comfort rather than distraction, and this small act spoke volumes, because animals do not relax unless they feel safe. And as the owner quietly continued preparing the cake, the sound of the knife and plates blended into the background, no longer sharp or alarming, just part of the environment. And from time to time the cat looked up, not with suspicion but with quiet curiosity, as though observing rather than evaluating. And in those moments it became clear that the earlier fear had not damaged trust but had, in fact, strengthened it, because the cat had learned that even when something frightening appears, it does not mean harm will follow. And that realization settled deeply, changing the energy of the space, and the room now felt lived in and calm, not defined by what had almost gone wrong, but by how gently it had been resolved. And the cat's relaxed posture, its steady breathing, and its unbothered presence became a silent confirmation that the bond between them remained intact, grounded in patience and reassurance rather than control. And as the owner finally set the cake aside and sat down, The cat approached once more, curling up nearby, content and trusting, leaving the confusion behind and choosing comfort instead. By the time the cake was no longer the focus of the room, the moment had transformed into something quietly meaningful. Something that lingered beyond the surface of what had happened, because the cat, now fully at ease, had returned to its natural rhythm, moving slowly, choosing rest over vigilance. And the owner watched this with a sense of relief, understanding that the true test had never been about the cake itself, but about how fear is handled when it appears unexpectedly. And, as the cat settled into a comfortable spot nearby, eyes half closed, body loose and unguarded, it was clear that the earlier confusion had not left a mark of distress, but instead had passed like a brief shadow, replaced by calm and familiarity, and the room carried that calm forward, filled with the soft sounds of everyday life, the gentle clink of a plate, the quiet shift of a chair, the steady breathing of an animal that felt safe, and in that stillness there was a lesson that did not need to be spoken. One about patience, trust, and the importance of allowing moments to resolve without force. Because the cat had not been rushed, scolded, or pushed, it had been given time. And in that time it found its own understanding. And as the owner finally reached down to stroke its fur, the cat responded by leaning in, not out of habit, but out of comfort. And the connection between them felt deeper than before, shaped by shared silence rather than action. And as the day continued and the strange moment faded into memory, what remained was a quiet bond, strengthened not by excitement or spectacle, but by calm presence, proving that even the most unsettling moments can end in peace when met with patience, and that sometimes the strongest reassurance is simply being there, allowing trust to rebuild itself naturally, until fear dissolves and only comfort remains. Long after the cake had been put away and the room returned to its usual order, the impact of what happened still quietly lived on. Not as fear, but as a softened awareness, because the cat moved through the space with an ease that felt deeper than before, as if something inside had settled permanently, and it chose familiar places to rest, pausing near the owner more often, not out of need, but out of reassurance, and the owner noticed this subtle closeness, understanding that moments like these leave impressions even when they pass calmly. And as the cat lay stretched out, eyes closing fully now, its breathing slow, and even there was no trace of tension left in its body, only comfort, and the earlier confusion seemed distant, almost unreal, like a brief disturbance in an otherwise steady world. And the quiet between them felt meaningful, filled with mutual understanding that didn't require repetition or explanation. And the room itself felt warmer, not because anything physical had changed, but because trust had quietly reinforced its place. And the cat, having faced something unsettling and come through without harm, appeared more grounded, responding to sounds and movements without alarm, confident in the predictability of its surroundings. And as the owner went about simple tasks, the cat remained relaxed, occasionally opening one eye just to check, then closing it again, fully secure. And this calm ending stood in contrast to the tension that had once filled the space, serving as a reminder that fear, when met with patience rather than force, loses its power naturally. And as the light in the room slowly shifted and the day moved forward, the cat remained at peace, curled comfortably, no longer thinking about reflections or confusion, only about rest and warmth, leaving behind a quiet conclusion to a moment that could have gone differently, but instead ended in understanding, trust, and a calm that felt complete. In the end, nothing dramatic needed to happen for the moment to truly close, because the quiet resolution was enough. And as the cat slept peacefully, unaware of how close it had come to fear earlier, the owner sat nearby, simply present, allowing the stillness to speak for itself. And the room felt whole again, not because the strange object was gone, but because understanding had replaced confusion, and the cat, breathing softly, embodied that understanding without needing words, showing how trust is restored not through explanation, but through consistency and calm. And when it finally stirred, stretching lazily and opening its eyes, there was no sign of unease, only familiarity, as if the experience had been gently folded into memory and set aside. And the owner smiled, recognizing that what mattered most was not the illusion or the test, but the patience shown in that moment. Because animals remember how situations feel, not how they are explained. And this one had ended with safety. And as the day continued and ordinary sounds filled the space again, the cat moved freely, confident and untroubled, leaving behind a final impression of peace, a quiet reminder that even when fear appears suddenly, it can dissolve just as quietly when met with trust. time, and the simple reassurance